Summary of Spies by Michael Frayn. After 50 years have passed, the protagonist, Stephen Wheatley, tells the story of his childhood. The unique smell of privet in the summer air makes him miss his childhood and wants to take a trip from Germany to the Close, the English neighborhood where he grew up. He starts to remember new, specific things about the neighborhood when he gets there, even though it looks and feels different. Stephen then tells the story of his childhood, jumping back and forth between the present and the past throughout the book. He was a shy kid who liked to hang out with his best friend Keith Hayward. He tells Keith that he and his family were very wealthy and that he was glad to be Keith's friend. Stephen was the only person in the Close who often went to the Haywood's house besides Auntie Dee, who was Keith's mother's sister. Stephen starts to remember the day that everything changed when Keith said 6 easy words that turned our world upside down. Stephen says Keith's 6 words were, "My mother is a German spy." He has trouble remembering the exact order in which the events occurred. Stephen doesn't question Keith's claim after that, and the two of them start planning a secret mission to spy on Keith's mother. They turn an old notebook into a record and do their first investigation in the living room of Keith's mother. Stephen and Keith look through her notebook and mark the dates on her calendar with little X's that mean they happen every month. The X's are thought to be a note for secret meetings, but it's more likely that they're just marking her periods. Stephen, in the present, says that this is another place where the story changes. In order to spy on Keith's mother, Stephen jumps ahead in time to when he and Keith set up an official hiding place in the privet bushes that surround the front of Miss Durrant's bombed house. They promise that they will never tell anyone about their secret mission, and Keith puts up a sign that says privet, spelled private, at the door to their secret hangout. Some of the first things Stephen and Keith try to do to figure out who Keith's mother is don't work out, but one Saturday, Stephen and Keith see Keith's mother going to Auntie Dee's to get a shopping list for Auntie Dee. Keith runs after her, and Stephen is right behind him. But when the street turns, they lose her. They start to guess where she might have gone, but then they find her back at Auntie Dee's house. It happens more than once that Keith's mother disappears around the corner while the boys follow her. Barbara Barrel, a girl from the neighborhood, bothers them where they are hiding and tries to find out about their secret operation. But just as it looks like nothing is working, Stephen sees Keith's mom wiping slime off her hands while she scolds Keith for staying out late. Stephen stops the story and goes back to the present, where he talks about how his childhood town is laid out geographically. He says that the Close was brand new when he moved in because it was an extension of the train. At the end of the Close, the street turned into the avenue on the left. To the right, a tunnel linked to the lanes, which were a narrow path that ended in green fields. After the lanes, there was the cottages, a sad town full of dirty kids and mean dogs, an empty farm, and finally the barns, and no man's land where building stopped when the war started. Stephen says that the cave is where the slime on Keith's mom's hands came from. That's how he figures out where she went. She turned right at the end of the street and went into the tunnel. Stephen and Keith go to the tunnel to look around. On their way, they pass Keith's mother, who is holding a letter. In the bushes outside the cave, they find the box of an old croquet set and a pack of smokes with a X on the inside. Stephen is alone in the hideout the next day when Barbara comes to join him. Barbara comes up with a few ideas for why Keith's mom always does Auntie Dee's shopping. She thinks Keith's mom might be buying things on the black market or giving Auntie Dee's secret boyfriend a message. Stephen, meanwhile, doesn't care about her rumors and feels bad that he let her into his and Keith's private space. Following day, Stephen is once more by himself in the privet bushes when Keith's mother comes to check on him. She asks Stephen about the spying game he and Keith are playing and gently tells him that it might be rude to the neighbors. She tells Stephen that she might not let Keith play with him if they don't stop watching, and she asks Stephen to not tell anyone what they talked about. Stephen goes out to the box by the tunnel that night to prove for sure that Keith's mother is a spy, but he finds a strange man there whose face he can't see. The man gets away, and Stephen, who is scared, goes back to the Close to see his worried parents. He finds that he brought back a sock from the croquet box under the lamps. Neil and Stephen go back to the cave together and find that the box is no longer there. Then they hear steps going up into the lanes and choose to follow the sounds. They go past the cottages and into the barns, where they find someone hiding under the ground with an old corrugated iron sheet blocking their view. As the boys keep hitting the iron sheet with sticks, they start to think that the man behind it has died of fear. They quickly ran back to the close and saw Keith's father waiting impatiently for Keith's mother, who still hadn't come back from running chores. Right away, Keith's mom shows up and asks Stephen, "Was it you too?" Now that the story is back in the present, Stephen is wondering what he knew when he was younger. He told her that he felt bad about breaking his word to her and that he had probably thought and not thought that she was a German spy. He talks about how he finally got the nerve to knock on Keith's door, even though he hadn't seen him in a while. He discovers that Keith has given up on their covert task, and he is okay with things being normal again. Keith's dad asks him to find a lost thermos, but Keith doesn't know where it is and gets beat up because of it. It was at that point that Stephen learned Keith's mother had taken the thermos to the barns. He meets her in the tunnel and throws slime all over her dress. He then tells her that Keith will be punished again if she doesn't bring the thermos back home. Stephen no longer plays with Keith after what happened, and he knows that he will never be a part of the Haywoods' world again. From the lookout, he still watches the Haywoods, and he doesn't see Keith's mother leave the house very often. Barbara thinks this might be because Keith's mother has a secret boyfriend. While this was going on, Barbara said that her older sister Deirdre and Stephen's brother Jeff had been smoking and kissing in the hideout. In the view one afternoon, Keith's mother goes to see Stephen and asks him to bring a shopping basket to the strange guy, who she says is very sick. Stephen agrees, and Keith's mother walks out of the bushes. Barbara comes in right away to find out what Keith's mother wanted. After she pulls out a cigarette, they smoke it together and look through the basket. Eventually, they kiss. Stephen and Barbara look through the basket and find a letter. Barbara tries to open it. Suddenly, Keith's dad shows up and wants to talk to Stephen. He tells Stephen to bring the basket. Stephen goes with Keith's dad to his garage, where Keith's dad tells Stephen to stop being silly. At first, Stephen doesn't want to leave the basket with Keith's dad, but he does. He then comes home crying, not being able to explain what's bothering him to his parents. Stephen comes home from school the next day and puts together a small package of food and medicine to give to the strange guy. He leaves the things in the bag near the iron sheet at the barns. Someone calls Stephen's name. The story goes back to the present once more, and Stephen wonders if he knew who had called his name back then. He says the voice sounds like someone he knows and not at all alien or like a tramp. Stephen tells him that Keith's mother can't come because of a sound calling for her. The man then inquires about Auntie Dee and her daughter Millie's health. The man tells Stephen that he has loved Keith's mother forever and asks Stephen to give her a piece of silk with a map of Germany on it and tell her forever. Stephen sits in the lookout and thinks that Keith won't come back to where they are hidden. But when he gets home from dinner, Keith is waiting for him. Keith is mad that Stephen let Barbara into their spot and showed her all of their things. Keith hurts Stephen by slashing his throat with his knife until he draws blood. Stephen figures out that Keith must have learned this from his dad, which is why Keith's mom always has a scarf around her neck, even in the summer. Stephen can't hide his wound from his parents when he gets home. Stephen falls asleep soon after his father cleans up the wound. When he wakes up in the middle of the night, he plans to hide the silk map in the barns. But he finds other men at the barns taking the body of the mystery man who had been hit by a train. In the present, Stephen thinks about the secret scarf and the cave again, which is the start of the end of the story. This is what he says happened after that night. He never played with Keith again, Uncle Peter was missing, and Auntie Dee and Keith's mother had a fight. He finally says it, Stephen was the secret German. He used to go by the name Stefan Weitzler. He says that his family moved from Germany before the war, and since his mother was English, they changed their name to Wheatley. He also tells Stephen that they are Jewish, which he didn't know as a child. Stephen went back to his home country after his parents died because he felt like he had never really taken to life in England. He had a rough start in Germany because he had to learn a new language in a new place. But he became a professional translator and met a German woman, with whom he married and started a family. Stephen then tells him that his father was a spy, a German man who worked for the British during the war. He keeps talking about what happened to the other people who lived in the close, like Keith, who became a lawyer. Stephen finally tells everyone that the strange man was actually Uncle Peter.
About the author. Frayn was born in Mill Hill, Middlesex. He writes a lot of plays, novels, and translations. Frayn worked as a writer and columnist for The Guardian and The Observer after finishing from the University of Cambridge, where he studied philosophy. He wrote satirical and funny articles and published a few books on the side. In 1965, his book The Tin Man won the Somerset Maugham Award. In 1966, The Russian Interpreter, which won the Hawthornden Prize, he also wrote Towards the End of the Morning. Noises Off, 1982, Benefactors, 1984, and Copenhagen, 1998, are some of his plays. Copenhagen got the Evening Standard Award for Best Play of the Year in 1998 and the Tony Award for Best Play, USA, in 2000. Frayn translated many works from Russian during this time, such as plays by Chekhov and Tolstoy. He married critic and biographer Claire Tomalin.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.